Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Kurt Knoll, the Director of Member Relations here at Barnabas Foundation. I bring you greetings from Central Florida, where I happen to be this week attending the Kingdom Advisors Conference here in Florida. Joining me today is Steve Baker, one of our state directors of the planning services here at Barnabas Foundation. And also waiting in the wings is Heather Day, just in case we need her, as I've noticed this morning in our testing that we've had a few connection issues with my internet connection here while I'm here down at the conference. And so if by some chance I happen to lock up or fall off, Heather will graciously jump in and take over. Today's topic is family matters, navigating family dynamics in your estate plan. Throughout today's broadcast, if you happen to have any questions during feel free to type into the Q&A section there at the bottom of your Zoom controls. They'll pop up here on our screen and we'll address those questions as we're able to. Also, today's session is being recorded. So if you happen to have a family member or friend that would like to, or you think would be beneficial seeing this topic today in the recording, you'll be able to share it with them, and we'll be posting that here in the next couple of days at barnabasfoundation.com/interactive. And again, today's topic, family matters, navigating family dynamics. And Steve, you've been with us for 27 years, and prior to that, you did estate planning and private practice. So over the years, you've met with hundreds, if not thousands of families, and no doubt you've come across a lot of different unique situations, as every family has. And we have to, the estate plans need to be just as unique as we address those things. And so when we think about family dynamics, what are we referring to when we say that?
Yeah, thanks, Kurt, and greetings to everybody joining us today. And I think family dynamics is sort of a broad term, but let me first tell you, I looked up the definition of dynamics, and it actually says the force or properties which stimulate growth, development, or change within a system or a process. So, we kind of want to bring that into the family dynamic concept. So what we're really kind of talking about here would be the family forces, the beliefs, the values, the characteristics, the relationships that there are within our families that really kind of impact this whole process of developing a plan, or if there's already one in place, just kind of thinking about how does that implement maybe some changes or things that we want to add into there now. So I don't think we should view this whole family dynamics thing as a real negative in any way, shape, or form. I think it's really just a matter of being real and honest about all of these different things that make up our families and or the people that we want to include in our planning in one way, shape, or another. So there might be some difficult situations that are there, but I don't think we want to view those as negatives. I think we want to view those as just things that are there that we really have to just be real and honest with and plan accordingly.
No, absolutely, completely, Steve. And as you said, not every family dynamic issue is something that's negative, as you said. I mean, in my own life, I happen to be, while divorced, previously remarried recently, and I have 5 wonderful stepchildren in addition to my own children. But that creates a dynamic now has to be quite unique in my own situation. And so we can celebrate all those things and just kind of consider how do we handle those in our estate plan. So as continuing on with that question there, Steve, how do you, when thinking about family dynamics, how do they come into play, when you're working with families on their estate plan?
Yeah, so I think the first part of this is, what if we do no planning? And so, Kim, you can go ahead and put that first piece up there. But I think what we start to think a little bit about is, if we do some planning, you see the family that's kind of covered by the umbrella. They've kind of dealt with issues and are kind of comfortable with where they're at. If we don't do any planning, we start to be on the other side of this picture, where you start to have some cord involvement. There's the potential for lots of other things to happen, chaos, conflict, complications, and other things that kind of come in there. So the family dynamics can really come into play in this place where we don't do any planning. So that's why we really encourage people to start this process if you haven't done it yet, or continue on this process if you've already done it, because it'll solve some of these issues and make it a little simpler and easier. So you can go ahead and remove that slide. But when we talk about how does it come into play in the planning or developing the plan, I think we first have to kind of look at the family itself. So who are the people we're talking about benefiting? What are their particular situations that we need to take into account? So this can be, if you're married with no children, never had any children, what does that look like, and how do we handle that? If you have a situation where married but older kids, what does that look like? How are the kids doing? And what do we want to do in terms of a plan for them? And then what if we are married with younger children? All of those, that's kind of the family sort of makeup, I'll call it. The second piece is when we talk with folks, we really love to dig into kind of these passions and values and goals and objectives. And how do we view stewardship in terms of the planning? We're planning with God's resources. We're planning with God's people because our family members are children of God. And so we kind of need to make sure that we're wrapping all of those kinds of ideas and beliefs and passions all into kind of developing this plan. You can put up the second component there, Kim or Heather.
And as you can see, we've lost Kurt, but we'll can carry on, right? Keep carrying on.
Yeah, so if you can put that second piece up there. Some of the times we talk a little bit about special circumstances. And when we're talking about, we have this flow chart that we put up here. So a lot of times when we're talking with folks about things that we need to consider in the plan, one of them is the type of plan it is. So you can see here we have the idea with wills and a revocable living trust, and then you have some other documents there regarding a healthcare power and a durable power of attorney for financial matters. So sometimes we have special needs in our family. We might have a beneficiary who has an incapacity that will be long-term. And so our trust kind of concept in here, we can carve out a piece that will take care of that beneficiary for their lifetime, and then at some point distribute the assets that are in that portion of the trust for their care. Sometimes we have adult children who need special considerations. Maybe an outright distribution to them isn't the best. So this trust can also include a piece where it's distributed to them over periods of years, because that's the best way to kind of benefit them. We also could have inequality of beneficiaries. Some children are doing well, some children are not doing very well. We talk about what is their faith background and how are they doing in living out their faith. That can impact kind of the distribution ideas. Do they get along? This is a little bit of the difficult part, maybe not so much a negative, but a difficult part. So if there's the possibility where they're not going to get along or there can be some conflict, we might choose to go over to the right side of this chart and make sure that we're into a probate setting, because that's where some of these issues can be addressed, and we're not putting other family members in a difficult spot just through the trust. So blended families can kind of be a difficult or a special planning kind of a circumstance. So that can all be done kind of within the concept of doing an estate plan. This isn't necessarily the flow chart in which everybody is going to jump in and that's what their plan is going to look like, but it just gives you kind of a visual of that living trust kind of a concept can handle a lot of things. But at the end of the day, we're really trying to think about family dynamics kind of affect the who we benefit. It affects in what proportions we're going to benefit both family members and charities. And it can affect the how. So the circumstances in our family, the makeup of our family, all of those kinds of things can affect that. Now, dynamics is also sort of a fluid thing, right? It's not just a static, here's what it is. And so we really are talking a lot with folks about making sure you keep this up to date, because because our situations and our families change and circumstances change. So we really need to make sure that once we've incorporated our kind of dynamics into our planning, that we also recognize we need to keep them up to date too.
Steve, that's really wonderful information. So many good things that you've covered. I love that. I love that you talk about how the will is it can be an opportunity to reflect our values and honor God. It's not just a document. There's certainly no one size fits all. Depending on family situation, it's going to change. Depending on what you want to communicate to the next generation, it's going to change. So since we're off script anyway, a little bit with me taking over, I wondered if you could just talk for a little bit about, so we have several different attendees today, some who have worked directly with Barnabas Foundation in the past, and several who support one of our member ministries. I'm curious if you could talk a little bit about if they're on this call, they have access to planning services, and I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about how a planner helps someone navigate and find the solutions for their estate plan.
Yeah, so I think basically what we're trying to help people through is coming up with a plan that they believe honors God and their kind of commitment to making this process valuable for themselves, for their families, and potentially putting resources into the kingdom work that, you know, many of those folks have included ministries and have been involved with those ministries over years. So what we're going to do is dig into a little bit more of some of these special circumstances. I mean, we're going to sit down with folks and talk about the property and the people and figure out, you know, where are they at? What is their passion? What is their goal and objective in all of this? And then talk about what types of plan might work for them. And then the last piece we're going to talk about is who do you want to be involved in being executor or trustee of a trust, if that is something that works for you. And so what we do is kind of put that back into what we call a blueprint. And so it's a document that sort of summarizes all of these things, puts it on paper about what your passions and your goals and objectives and some suggested plan options. And then they take it to their own attorney if they have one. And if they don't, we can try to provide some names of Christian attorneys in their area that can get these documents done. So myself and all of the planners have all practiced law before, have been in these situations where we're helping people through, but we're not the ones who are going to do the actual legal documents for folks. So we're kind of coming alongside and doing some pre-planning and helping to frame this up that meets what people's goals and objectives are. And then I think it really helps the attorneys who are drafting the documents as well, because they can now see, boy, these folks are really well prepared. They've got some very concise statements about who they are and what they believe in and how they want to kind of handle these things. So that's the process that we go through with folks. And we really love that process and being able to sit down and help folks put this type of plan in place.
That's fantastic. And if I might just share from personal experience, we were in a situation where my dad was going through health concerns, and I'm the oldest of 4 kids. And my dad was sitting literally in a hospital bed, trying to verbalize what he was kind of thinking for each of us. And we're all in different scenarios. We've got, some of us have kids, some of us don't. Some of us are doing a little bit better than others. Some of us are struggle with managing money. So my dad was verbalizing these wishes that he'd like in some of his initial thoughts. And I said, Dad, you've got to get this in writing. And I think you should talk to my friend, Amy, who is one of the estate planners. And she helped them to walk through different scenarios that would work with them. And it took so much of the burden off for them to plan what it might look like. It took the burden off of me to help them figure that out. And now it makes it so much simpler for them to get those documents drafted. So I wonder if you...
The reality is a lot of people who haven't done any planning, the obstacles for them are they don't really know what it is. I mean, they don't know what it entails. There might be some fear associated with it. There might be other emotions that kind of go with it. And so, yeah, what we try to do is just kind of come alongside it and be the encourager, right? Just help people kind of say, here's how we can help with this. And once you get it all done, you'll feel a whole lot better about getting this in place. So yes.
Exactly. I do see we've had some questions. We'll come back to those, but I wonder if you could talk a little bit about, like I said, we were having these conversations in the middle of chaos. What are some best practices? How can those who are in the process of planning or have a plan in place, what's some best practices for them to communicate those with their children or their grandchildren and any family that are involved?
Yeah. So let me first just address a quick area here. Sometimes our family dynamics and relationships and makeup will also impact who we choose to be involved as potentially executors or trustees, powers of attorney, et cetera. And so I think it's important to make sure that when we think about the people to be doing those things, that we're talking about focusing on the skills and gifts and talents to get things done, not necessarily the oldest has to do it, or the person with this particular degree behind their name. It's really about the right person or persons. And so sometimes that gets met with inside of our family definition, right? That we have enough people that we believe and will accomplish what we want to be accomplished. Sometimes there isn't anybody in our family definition, if you will. So we need to think about, okay, who's going to be the executor trustee? Or maybe we have difficult situations with some of our family members, and it's just not going to be a good thing if they're involved. It could be something that raises a lot of conflict and different things. So we don't want to put people in the positions of encouraging conflict or et cetera. So if you have some difficult situations like that, we can always turn over to professional help. There are professionals that will act as executors of estate and trustees of trusts and different things like that. So I think that's one way that our family dynamics kind of also impact who we choose to sort of affect what we're doing.
Absolutely.
Then speaking about the communication, I mean, for years and years, people just never talked about their financial stuff, and they never talked about their plan, right? And it always was, well, I guess we'll find out when they pass away. And I'm really encouraged by the fact that there's a lot more movement now towards communication. And I think it goes from the very simple of parents sort of saying, yes, we have our plan in place. Here's where we have everything. And it's okay, to talking about what it is they were trying to accomplish, what's important to them, and how they're going to do it, to even going to the other side where there are family meetings where you really talk through the whole process. We put together a piece, and you can put that up, Kim, just to show our attendees. We have a piece that we've developed that kind of walks through the whole idea of communication with family, that talks about how you share your estate plan with your loved ones. There's some considerations to talk through, some tips and some ideas on how to do this to make sure that it's a healthy and important dialogue about your values and your goals and how this is all gonna come to fruition. For those of you on the call who might be thinking about your parents and how do you approach your parents about this, I tend to suggest to folks, don't talk too much about, well, how are you going to distribute things? I think we want to talk a little bit more about, tell us what your values are by getting your plan done. Tell us what you were thinking about. Tell us what was important to you. Tell us about whatever else you want to tell us, and sort of leave the door open for our parents to kind of start to share some things. You can also tell them, hey, I'm not interested in the specific distributions unless you wish to share that. I'm not interested in the dollar amounts. I just want to know more about what you were thinking and who you are as a person. And I think that opens up a little bit better conversation about that whole process. But sharing and communication is really important, I think, in this whole process.
That's such a good point, Steve. And if you're interested in having that resource that he pulled up, and it's got a worksheet on it, it's really handy. It gives you a place to jot down some of your notes and some of the things that you might cover with your family. You can email us at planning@barnabasfoundation.com, and we'd be glad to share that with you. We have a couple people who have raised their hands. If you'd like to ask a question, just go ahead and type it into the Q&A. But I'm going to read this question from a different Steve. Thank you for typing in. I have been blessed with plenty of money. What options would you recommend for preserving the principal at the sacrifice to perhaps no/low interest? And if the government puts demands on banks messing with private citizens' money, is a facility like Barnabas protected? Wow. There's a lot there.
It sounds like about an hour meeting to have with that person. Yeah. So, I mean, there's a lot to unpack in that. I guess I can't really be specific without knowing a lot more about, again, the family kind of dynamic and situation, what the ultimate goals and objectives are. You know, I do know that there are folks who do put some resources into Barnabas Foundation in whether it's into a charitable trust or into a donor advised fund. And again, those are charitable specific kinds of plans. It's not necessarily any kind of an asset protection sort of an idea. So I think we need to focus more on, you know, overall, what's the goal and objectives, and how is this going to fit within a bigger picture. And we'd love to have a deeper conversation about that at some point. So.
Absolutely. We have another, this is a great question from Jax 2021. He says that less than 60 days ago, we engaged the service of an attorney in our state to update our revocable living trust, POAs, healthcare representatives, etc. All this was accomplished for my wife and I. We've been gifted over the years and have been able to accumulate significant wealth. My question is our Barnabas Foundation planners able to review these recently completed legal documents, or are Barnabas planners only able to work with couples on the front end of the process to recommend alternatives? Thank you.
Yeah, that's a great question. The answer to that is no. We are happy to review existing documents, et cetera. And I think the review would be kind of in the process of, do you have some changes that you want to make, and are there things that you just don't understand? We can help with that. We're not in the process or realm of trying to give you a legal stamp of approval, if you will. If that's what you're looking for, we really can't give legal advice on any of those current documents. So if it's a matter of reviewing this plan that you put in place to see if it still matches your desires, what does it really mean? Did it actually accomplish what your goals and objectives were? You know, we can help you think through that for sure.
Great. We have another question from Eleanor. She said the person that she added to her will has health issues that she was not aware of before selecting them. Can I talk to the person who assisted me at the beginning with Barnabas, or someone else at Barnabas, to make a decision? So I think she's asking the question, she's already met with a planner in the past. Can she meet with them again to help make that decision?
Yes, absolutely. We are more than willing to meet again multiple times over multiple years. And that's perfectly fine, because again, it's a fluid process, right? And so it's we are able to help people all along this journey of figuring out what's the best plan.
Fantastic. We had a question that came in through email. I'm going to read this one from, let's see, this was from William G. And he said, we have done well, net worth over $3 million. Current will is 1/3 each to our 2 children and charity. But since you are dealing with navigating family dynamics, our 2 children will be in two very different places, both secure, but one on north of 10 million and one about 1 million. Should we continue an even split or weigh it towards a child with fewer resources?
So that is a fantastic question that digs into this whole kind of concept of what is fair versus what is equitable. And a lot of times equal is where we kind of land, okay? But I think there is some value in talking about what is fair and what are the needs, so to speak. So for many folks, they do have to kind of wrestle with the idea of, should I or could I do uneven distributions, if you will. Both children would benefit, but is it okay to have a larger percentage going to one versus the other? And so, although I can't give, a one answer fits all, I think what it really boils down to is, first of all, you got to really commit that decision to prayer and kind of think about, how does this impact everybody? But I also think you have to communicate some things, whether that be ahead of time or in some way, shape, or form, communicating that, the unequalness is not in any way, shape, or form something that means we value somebody less or we value somebody more. It's just we've taken into account considerations and circumstances. So you have to make sure you communicate that you love them both equally and all the rest, but there's just different circumstances. So
how do along those lines, how do family dynamics impact charitable giving? How does that impact how they might give to ministry?
Yeah, so I think when we start talking about the family dynamics, and if we're incorporating these ideas of passions and values and goals and objectives and the stewardship considerations, I think family dynamics can be a really positive things for supporting ministries and putting resources back into God's kingdom. What can hinder a little bit is surprises. So if there's no communication about why this is happening or what values are trying to be implemented through this plan, sometimes that can hinder it, because there can be some suspicion or question about, was that really the intent? We had no idea that this is what mom or dad really wanted to do. It can cause some hindrances, I would call it. It doesn't necessarily eliminate the charitable component, but I think it can be a hindrance. But with communication, it's really amazing the power that can happen with that, because a lot of times, other family members, children, they really get behind this and say, wow, that was a really important thing for mom and dad. And we want to see this happen. Maybe we want to get involved with the same kinds of concepts and start to put some resources into kingdom ministries as well. So I think the family dynamics can have a real positive on the supporting ministries and continuing to for those values to kind of go on for many years. So
great. We have a couple last questions we'll touch on real quick. One of my two grown children isn't financially astute and spends more erratically than I like. I question the child's ability to handle an inheritance in a sensible way. Given that a smaller portion of my estate is designated for nonprofits, is a give it twice trust a good option for this child, or are there other approaches?
Yeah, so the idea of a child who doesn't handle money well, the way to benefit them, you still want to benefit them, but it's the how. And that was kind of one of the things I was referring to that I mentioned earlier. It's how we benefit them. So that could be done within the confines of, say, a revocable living trust, where a portion is going to this child, but instead of it being an outright distribution, it might be spread out over a period of years. There are, and I'm not sure if this is how they are referring to this, the give it twice trust, but there are ways for folks to put money into some sort of a charitable trust that can benefit the child for a period of years. But it's already kind of set up into the charitable side, if you will, of the estate. And then when that child passes away, or after the expiration of a period of time, those funds in that trust end up going to ministries. So there are different ways to do it, but I think the key part of it is recognizing that maybe an outright distribution isn't a good thing. So how do we figure out the best way to kind of make that happen? We still want to benefit them, but what's the best way to make it happen?
Absolutely. And I think the bottom line there is there are so many options, and don't get caught up in a specific way that you've heard of. It's beneficial for you to meet with somebody who can help you walk through the different options that apply to your circumstances. And to the extent that Barnabas Foundation, that you'd like us to be part of that process, we would be honored to do so. Last question from Gary. My 3 siblings and myself have a trust owning farm ground. At this time, if our mother dies, it's not known whether the ground will be sold or if it will be rented out on a cash per acre basis. How does Barnabas handle these very different strategies?
Well, I don't know that it's a matter of how Barnabas is going to handle that strategy. I think it's a matter of what does the trust say, and if mother is still living, is there a way to find out, kind of what the intent is, and all those kinds of things. So we'd be happy to have a conversation about that with you, and maybe sit down and kind of help work through that piece. And I think some manageable conclusion can come up from that. So happy to help you with that.
Thank you, Steve. You've been a wealth of information today, and I know we covered a lot of topics. Thank you all for joining us today. As we mentioned, this session has been recorded. It will be posted in the next couple of days at barnabasfoundation.com/interactive. We encourage you to share this with a friend or a family member who might benefit from this. And if you have any follow-up questions, you can either reach out to the ministry representative that referred you to this session, or you can also email us at planning@barnabasfoundation.com. And of course, if you would like the resource that we showed earlier of sharing your estate plan with your families, you can reach out to that same email address. We are honored to serve you. And if we can help in any way, just give us a call. Thank you.